You're listening to Greater Good Radio Hawaii. Please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. Today's guest is Susan Page, founder of known international fashion and photo companies, Susan Pages, and currently the vice president of Coffee Enterprises, Inc. Susan serves as a director of several boards, including Kapiolani Health Foundation and Women in Need. So Susan, you're such a busy person. You've been involved with so many businesses, and you've talked about getting involved in the community a lot. Are you able to share with us about why you got involved in the community and some of the organizations that you're involved in?
Okay, great question. Why you get involved in the community is because we're here to give back. We have a lot in our country, and I feel very blessed in my life to have a lot. And so I think we all, and especially I learned this lesson in Hawaii. It's such a wonderful land of kokua, and people here are so good. And I feel like that's a part of any person's personal life and business life, is to give back. Sometimes it's harder to do when you're in business and you're running yourself pretty crazy, but we always managed to do a lot of things within the business and personally. I got involved very early on in 1984 with the Kapiolani Children's Miracle Network, and have been an on-air host for that for 22 years, and have been on the board of directors for the foundation for about the last 8 years. And I think it's really our healthcare. It's just children issues are very, very important to me. And that's whether it's here in Hawaii, wherever it is. And now I'm focused a little bit on Africa, because there's such a grave and dire need there beyond what we can even imagine here. Our greatest need here is very small compared to the least of their needs there. And so that's what we're doing.
Can you tell us a story, maybe a personal story of why this Africa project is so important to you?
Well, as a Christian, I got involved in this in our church. This particular organization called Heart for Africa spoke to me because I think early on when I was a child, I met an African missionary from my hometown who worked in Kenya. And I think at that point I always dreamed of going to Africa. Never knew how I'd end up going, but I had one point about 5 years ago went to Soweto on a vacation. It was actually a vacation where we went to South Africa, my husband and I, and I decided to take a tour to Soweto, and I just was able to view the poverty there and the abject reality of what that life had been over the course of apartheid there, and what that resulted in for those people. So when Heart for Africa called me, in other words, Bruce Wilkinson was standing there at the pulpit and said, come and go, and this is what we're called to do as Christians, I immediately went. And I believe that what I would say about being there can be summed up in the faces of the children there. The orphanages, and I will tell you this right now, just my very first day, I got off the bus. We were in Swaziland. You fly into Johannesburg and you take a 5-hour bus ride on a rickety old bus across the countryside, and you get into this little tiny kingdom called Swaziland, which is the #1 AIDS-infected country in the world. 40%, and that's sort of a conservative estimation, but that's what the USAID puts out, is infected with HIV in that country, of about the size of Hawaii, population base and size, land size. And the first day I got there, our missionary on the ground said, do you want to go to an orphanage? Well, in my view, an orphanage was going to be a building. I mean, you kind of think it's going to have walls at least, right? So I said, sure, I really want to go. I mean, I'm jet lagged and I've been on a flight for 22 hours, but okay, yes, let's go. And so we drive over to this space, and I'm looking for the orphanage, and I see some little children sitting out on mats, and I see a very tiny little it looked like a little outhouse almost. I mean, it was just such a small place, and there were about 20 children or more, anywhere from 2 to 7 or 8, sitting out on little ragged mats on the dirt. And there was a pot that was boiling on some wood under a tree, sort of looked like a keawe tree. And there was a grandmother, and they call grandmothers there go-go's, like we call them tutus, they call them go-go's. And there was a go-go and some other teenage girls sort of helping. And that was the orphanage. An orphanage in Africa is a person and children. There may not be a roof over their heads. It's just children are being orphaned at the rate. Every second a child is orphaned in Africa. Every second. While we've been sitting here talking, how many children does that make? And so it's a mind-boggling, unbelievable issue there. And so that is why I'm very, very interested. I mean, the children deserve better. They don't deserve to be discarded. And we, even if, you know, the thing people say, oh, but Africa is just, I mean, come on, you can't help anybody in Africa, so why do you even bother, in a way? That's just kind of the attitude that I know many people have. But you bother because you might save one child. And it's worth it if you save one child or two children or 4 or 5. And so that's why you go. And there are many, many wonderful, hopeful examples of people, of children who have been saved, and orphanages that have been built. There's a great lot of work to do. You know, there are children over there who are 5 and 6 years old that are in prison for stealing. So we got a lot of work to do. Let's go. Come on, everybody. We can go together.
Thanks for joining us today on Greater Good Radio. For more information or a transcript of today's show, please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. This is your host, Evan Leong and Carrie Leong, saying please join us next time for another episode of Greater Good Radio Hawaii.